Welcome to Pick Up and Deliver, the podcast where I pick up my audio recorder when I drop my kid off at school and deliver an episode to you while I walk home. I'm Brendan Riley. Well, good morning, listeners. It is Tuesday, February 26th. The weather is chilly here in suburban Chicago, and we have a lovely light snow drifting down. It's probably 20 degrees, so it's cold enough that my face is getting a little stiff, and things are getting a bit chilly, but otherwise, all is well with the world. One of my favorite things to do in this podcast is talk about different collections of games and why I think they go together in different ways. So, with that in mind, today I'd like to talk about a game selection experience I had this morning, which is for the Boardgame Society. I think I've mentioned that I've been asked to be the faculty advisor for the Boardgame Society at my college. I am attending a meeting of them tonight. This is the third meeting of the group. I decided to let them have a couple weeks where they kind of find their footing and figure out who they are without old man Riley sticking his face in it. But I do want to come by maybe once a month or so to see what they're doing and get a sense of the ambiance and so on. So that's what I'm doing tonight at the Boardgame Society. So I decided I'd bring some games with, as you do when you go to a board game meetup, which led me to a really interesting conundrum. Namely, what games to bring. So what I'd like to do today is talk through my thinking about what factors shape which games I might decide to bring, and then tell you which games I ultimately chose and why. So the question for the day, to head over to the Pick Up and Deliver forums, would be, which games do you like to bring when you're going to this kind of group? So I will lay out the knowns and unknowns of the group. Known: the people coming to the Chicago Board Game Society, the Columbia College Board Game Society meetup, are people who are interested in board games, and presumably Columbia College students and or friends of students. That's about what I know. The unknowns: I have no idea how much these students know or don't know about board games. I can presume that most of them have played your standard game fare, but I can also assume that most of them have not played much in the way of what we'd call hobby board games or designer board games, the kind of games we talk about on this show. At the same time, who knows? We might have some people there who come from gaming families or have gaming experience. Or heck, I mean, they formed the Chicago Columbia College Board Game Society. I don't think that they're slouches. So they might already have played all of the games. So it's a real interesting challenge, because on one hand, I don't want to bring a bunch of games that are so obtuse that new hobby board gamers will be turned off. I didn't want to bring games that are going to run more than like an hour, or maybe much more than an hour to play, because I don't know the group that well, and I didn't want to start a game that's going to take 2.5 hours and occupy some percentage of the people in the group for that long, which maybe isn't the vibe of the group. So my filters were games I can teach to people who are relatively new to gaming but probably open to the experience. Games that play a varying player count in fun ways. Now, some of the games I picked, I would say, do not fit a large group scenario very well. Like, for instance, well, I'll talk about that, or fit a small group scenario very well. Because I guess the third unknown is I have no idea how many people are coming to this event. I don't know the president of the society, the student who helps organize it. I don't know. She never let me know how many students came the first week or how many have been coming. And so I don't know whether the Board Game Society has 5 members or 25 members or 2 members. And so I don't know what to expect in terms of count. So with that said, I'm going to let you know the games that I picked and why I chose them. So to start with, big game count. So assuming, one, my first assumption is they don't need me to bring or play any games. They said I could play. That was one of my conditions for being faculty advisor. If I come, I get to play games with them. But generally, I'm assuming that they would be self-sufficient if I didn't come, which means they're all bringing games, or some of them are bringing games anyway, and they don't really need me to play. So that said, my presumption is that if it's a very big group, they're going to divide into multiple groups anyway. But I brought a couple games that could play bigger groups just in case. So, first game, 2 rooms and a boom. This game accommodates as many people as you have to play. I'm very good at running and teaching it, and so it's an excellent one to bring in case the group wants to play something all together. It's also really good because it only takes 15 minutes to play, probably another 10 to explain for the first game, which means that you can play the whole thing in half an hour, or you can play like 3 rounds of it in an hour, which I find generally pretty satisfying, but it also can be kind of tiring. So that's 2 rooms and a boom. That's the biggest player count game that I brought. I also brought several games that accommodate many players. I did bring one other game that would accommodate as many as want to play, and that's Welcome To. Welcome To, as you'll recall, is a random and write game. You use a deck of cards to reveal a randomized set of inputs, and then you're filling in something on your own player sheet to try to get points by completing subdivisions of houses, by building pools and parks. It's like about planning a suburb. It's a fun game, but like I said, it holds as many players as are willing to play, because each person gets their own little score sheet and gets to fill out their own little map of the suburbs, meaning that everybody can play as many as they like. So that's Welcome To, and it will, again, accommodate as many people as are there if the group decide they wanted to play something big. I will also say that I know the class is being held, or the game group is being held in a room that has a document projector, so we could project the 3 decks up on the screen if we have enough people playing. Those are the 2 games that I brought that would accommodate the entire group if we decided we wanted to play that game. I brought several games that accommodate large numbers. In particular, I brought Avalon, which is the social deduction game themed around King Arthur's court, based on the game The Resistance, and it accommodates up to 10, which is really good. It's one of my favorites. I brought a couple games that accommodate 7, or in particular, I brought Between Two Cities. I picked that one. I thought that one was interesting for a couple of reasons. One, like I said, it accommodates 7, and it doesn't increase the play time, so that's helpful. It has a really different mechanism than anything else you'd encounter from games. I suspect nobody else has a game like that they're bringing, which makes for interesting play. Yeah, that it accommodates 7. It's probably a game they haven't played before, and it plays quick. You can play the whole thing in under an hour, which makes for, like I said, a good experience at an event where I don't know what the vibe is. If you haven't played Between Two Cities, it's a tile drafting game where you are building a city of 16 tiles. And it, like Suburbia or other city planning games, you know, if you put a bar next to a workplace, the bar gets money. If you put a house next to a factory, the house loses points because the people don't want to live by factories, stuff like that. There's a bunch of different scoring elements that people have to keep in mind when they're playing. And the way the game works is, on your turn, you're going to take 7 tiles, and you pick 2, and then you put the other 5 in a stack to your left. And then the 2 tiles you took, one of them you're going to play to a 4x4 grid on your right, and the other you're going to play on a 4x4 grid to your left. And the person to your right and left, each of them are also going to play 1 tile to the grid that you're planning, meaning the 2 of you are working together to plan that city. Then you pick up the tiles from the person on your right, pick out 2 of the 5 that you were passed, pass the remaining 3 to your left, and do the same again. So over time, what happens is you are planning out 2 cities, you are between 2 cities, and each city is scoring a little bit different. The next round, you're going to take cards and pass them the other direction, and so on. And the idea is that you are trying to get both cities to score well, because your final score is whatever the lower value city you helped build is. So if you build one city that scores 60 points and one city that scores 40, your score is 40 points. So that works out really nicely. Sometimes it does result in a tie, but then usually the tiebreaker is the score of the other city that the person worked on. So it balances out pretty well. It's a fun game. Not one I've played in a while, but easy enough to pick up. That's between two cities. I also brought a couple games that play 6. So, like I said, I had 2 that play close to infinite. One that plays 10, one that plays 7. 2 games that play 6. One is a short party game called PUaD. PUaD, I think I mentioned before, but basically the premise is you get a series of cards. If you're playing the regular PUaD game, it's just the word dude written in different ways. If you're playing the second version, More PUaD, which I also have, then you get a little picture, like a picture of a cowboy or a robot saying the word dude. And then what you're supposed to do is say the word dude in the way that you think the card is telling you to say the word dude. And then if you match someone else that you think is also saying the word dude the way you are, you say sweet. And if you both say sweet, then you hold up your card for the other to see, and if you're correct, it goes in front of you as a point you've scored. And if you are not matching, then you discard to the middle and you did not score that. The game goes until someone has gotten rid of all their cards, either by scoring or failing. And then everyone checks to see who has the most points. So that's PUaD. It plays 6. The other game I brought that plays 6 is a bit more complex. It's one of 2 games I would call more gamerly games, although I think all of these are really fun. And that's Sagrada. Sagrada is a dice drafting game where you are building a stained glass window, following a bunch of dice placement rules, and you're pulling dice from a pool of dice on your board. They have a 5 and 6 player expansion, which I have, so we can play up to 6. And that's a good game because it allows for a lot of conversation. It runs pretty smooth, I think. I'm not sure if I'd want to play with the just all the dice in the pool, or if I'd want everyone to have their own individual pool, which is a little harder, I think, actually. But makes the game go a little faster. And for a 6-player game, it might get a little slow otherwise. So that's Sagrada. And then the last game I brought really only plays 4, but I thought it was both quick and a gamerly game that I wanted to play. It's also, Sagrada is on my 10 for 10, but this is another one on my 10 for 10, and that's Gizmos. Gizmos is a fairly easy game to teach. It plays 4 pretty well, and the outcome of the game is pretty easy to... It runs pretty fast, so like if I were to teach it, I could get a couple different groups of people to play at the same time, or in quick succession. I suspect that none of my games will get played, or very few of them, but I always like to bring more than I need. So those were my 7 games that I'm bringing to the Board Game Society tonight to give a try. What games are you bringing? What games do you bring when you go to an event like this, where you think there are some people who might be gamers, some people who've never played a hobby game at all, and you don't know the player count? I'm keen to hear what kinds of games you bring and get some advice from you. Next episode, I'll let you know how it went. Pop over to Boardgame Geek Guild 3269 and let me know your thoughts on the matter. Thanks for joining me. I hope that your next walk is as pleasant as mine was. Bye-bye.
Brought to you by Rattlebox Games.